And I feel like that harsh tone is not as effective right now. They need some softness. I've adjusted the tone of my language. So instead of me speaking to you in a way that almost amplifies your shame, amplifies your insecurities, I'm speaking at a totally different tone. A lot of consumers are way more discerning. You know, like somebody mentioned, was it Tamisha? They're not lazy buyers. They are discerning. They have a much higher threshold of what is required for them to say yes. And I think, too, the other thing is really important to understand economic cycles. I'm not saying you need to go become an economist, but just understand, what is the market sentiment? It always goes up and down in waves. We are very much in an era right now where people, even if they have the money, they are holding on tight. Olive oil. Don't make no damn sense why it's so expensive right now. An avocado, like $3.99 in California. I'm like, it's ridiculous. And it's not necessarily they don't have the money, but people right now have an economic sentiment of fear for a lot of reasons. So it's like, okay, if that's the market we're in right now, pre-pandemic, even during the pandemic, we were very much in an economic swing of abundance and opportunity. Even though the world was shut down, but people was getting checks in the mail, people felt like they had access to opportunity regardless of what was going on. We are on the complete opposite end of the spectrum. So when you think about that and you think about how your marketing is, what am I doing in my messaging to reduce that perceived risk? And I think that is really, really important, and more of that identity-based storytelling is really doing what I'm noticing with clients and for myself is helping to reduce that perceived risk so that somebody feels more comfortable making a buying decision beyond just, yes, I like you, yes, I respect you, yes, I know that you can teach me these things, yes, I've seen you help a lot of other people, but there is a higher threshold of that perceived risk to get them to actually pay. But once they do, I'm noticing similar to what you said, once they pay, they normally won't leave right now because that threshold is so high, it's gonna take a lot for them to go trust somebody else to buy.
Perfect. That's exactly what I think we've been talking about here. And something that you were speaking on the economic flows and ups and downs is we have what's happening in people's bank accounts and then their thoughts about it.
Yes.
And they're separate, right? So
yes.
Yeah, and so something I've been realizing is in the pandemic, unemployment was higher than what it is right now. So many people still have their jobs, but they're scared.
Yes.
Because of what they're seeing in the media, what they're seeing in the news, or they know one person that maybe was laid off. And I think they're seeing the government shutdowns, the tech shutdowns, but they still have their job and they still have their income. Versus in the pandemic, literal businesses were closing, but they felt so abundant.
Yes.
And so I think that's interesting as well, where you have to look at people's thoughts and not just the reality.
Yeah, it's all about perceived risk. I mean, I think a lot of it is perception. Your ability to sell is what is the transformation that you're providing? What is the perceived value of that transformation in relationship to who that qualified individual is or is not? But so much of it is perceived risk, because even this fear that many people are feeling right now, some of it is real, but a lot of it it's fear. It's the worry of what could happen. It's not actually true for them right now.
I think because it's also perceived, you can change it.
1,000%.
And so I think that's something I want you all to know, you can change people's thoughts because it's not their 100% reality. You can actually overcome their objections, give more testimonials, articulate their exact thought or belief, and influence them to enroll.
Yeah, and I think one thing else that I'm noticing is just shifting the tone of voice in which you're doing it. I think also post-pandemic, there has been, a lot more mental health awareness, more burnout, more shame, just more emotions coming up. And before, y'all follow me, some of y'all in here follow me for a long time. I was very much hard hustle, I'm giving it to you straight, da-da-da-da-da. I'm talking to you like your black grandma, because I was raised by my black grandma. It was hard. And I feel like that harsh tone is not as effective right now, because so much of my audience, that tough, they need some softness. And I've adjusted the tone of my language. So instead of me speaking to you in a way that almost amplifies your shame, amplifies your insecurities, I'm speaking at a totally different tone. And that shift in tone, sometimes you might be delivering the exact same message, but are you giving it, Simone, this is what you need to do, girl. Today is the day, da-da-da-da-da-da, versus coming at a much calmer tone and adjusting the tone, it will land. Because when they're already afraid, you yelling at them, I'm just going, like, or I might, or it's just like I need something a little bit softer in tone for me to even have, like, open myself up to even listen to what it is that you have to say. So if some of your content right now is not fully resonating, look at what are different tonalities that I can use to apply this message and see if that lands as well.
How do we balance selling emotion, tone with also the program promise? And I think I told you on our live video, I feel like you started the whole program promise thing. Like, you were the program promise queen. So, like, how do we balance the two?
I mean, there's still a promise. There's still an outcome. I think, again, more of this identity-based messaging and the approach is like, and you've been mentioning it here too, like the how I versus the how to, or just how my client. I would just look at, like, how can I do more storytelling in my delivery? And I don't know, I probably need like a niche example to be able to drive this home, but it's just more about, like, how can I tell the story of the outcome and the promise and the result versus just like, here's this thing, buy my thing. Just where can we infuse more storytelling into the dialogue and call out more of those identity-based markers? And because you can still sell the promise without, screaming at somebody about it.
I think how we can do that too is say, storytelling. I was once where you were. I learned these things and I want to teach them to you. I think could be like a very specific way of like speaking to that tone and emotion while also having like more concrete things as well.
Yeah. And I think it's like going again, instead of doing the how to, how I did this with a client, describing the contextual experience of the moment versus, and I think Sam did a great job of this in her breakout session if you were in there. I know, woo-woo! With some of the examples I heard her give, just even about the biracial kid, parent, boom, right over here. And, instead of just like, this is how you help your biracial kids, like, deal with whatever at school versus like, my kid heard something on the playground and I wish I would have had a better answer. This is how I coached a parent on this, and this is how they were able to deal with maybe their 6-year-old that was dealing with racism in elementary school. Like, it's tell the story, contextualize the story to like that moment in time, as a way to be able to connect the dots versus just going into like the tactical tangibles.
Details.
Yes.
Like, that example is very, very detailed and small. Something I've been saying is like, small stories sell big.
Yeah.
Like, the smaller the story, the more detailed and intricate you can get, then that actually can connect with a lot of people.
Yeah, and I think like before, earlier years of business, like that level of storytelling wasn't necessary. Not to say that it didn't work, but it wasn't necessary to establish trust and reduce perceived risk to get the sale. Today, I feel like if you're only leading with like educational information, like I think too with the rise of AI, people can go get that from ChatGPT. Like pretty much every problem we solve to some degree, they can get a decent amount of information by asking. I call my ChatGPT Chad a lot of the time. I don't know why. I'm like, just channel that white man privilege and like give me some decent answers. But, and I think about that, like information is just at an even more abundant accessibility. And it's like, how can I deliver this information in a way that a robot cannot do it? The only way you can do that is through contextual storytelling. And I think that's also why more buyers are really resonating with that. And especially too, you're dealing with sophisticated consumers. They're not dumb. Like, they've been around the block, they've bought this stuff before, they've been burned before, they've experienced a lot, they have access to a lot. So it's like, how am I creating that connection and facilitating that transference of trust, which is what you're doing in a sales conversation. And more of that storytelling really helps like evoke and move people along that sales journey.
So good, so helpful. With that, you are creating a brand new course called Market Like a CEO.
This is the first time I've ever created a digital course in 9 years that does not have some sort of coaching
Live
component
element.
attached. Yeah, no, never. So yes, this is new for me.
So exciting.
This is true across the board in like a lot of different arenas. But when I think about content and I think about more of this identity-based messaging and more of this storytelling, y'all are incredible. Look at your cameras out. But when people always ask me, okay, Jay, when I think about this identity-based messaging, how do I know what to say when? How do I know where my gaps are? And this is true in sales. This is true in content. This works across the board. But how do you identify the gaps right now? You're either having a will issue or you're having a skill issue. And I think these are two main buckets. So when we think about will versus skill as it relations to sales and messaging, It's like the sales conversation starts the moment someone consumes a piece of your content. So when you think about the sales journey from that perspective, not when I get them on a sales call, but the moment they consume something of mine or somebody drops my name, that sales conversation has begun. And it's like, what am I doing? What are those touch points that I'm creating to facilitate that transference of trust to get them ready to make a buying decision with me? So I want you guys to frame it in that. Is this clicking? Okay. So when I think about that, there's how do I move people through the stages of awareness and get them prepared to make that buying decision? When I think about perceived risk and how I reduce it, there's either a skill issue that's happening or a will issue that's happening that is preventing them from feeling like they can make a buying decision. If it's a skill issue, it's probably like, what is the actual principle of what I teach or what I'm doing? They may not understand like the actual concept. And this is where a lot of how-to content exists. The other skill issue that might exist is they do not understand the process. What is the actual how, not like the how-to in the sense of like educational base, but what is the process that's going to be required in order for me to get this result? Most people stay heavily in the principle, maybe a little bit in the process when they're doing education, when they're doing content, and totally miss the will piece. The will piece, there's either a desire, which you cannot, you have no control over this. You cannot force somebody to want to have the desire to accomplish what it is that you want to do. A lot of y'all are probably in here trying to convince people to have the desire. Let them go. Remove your cape. Let them go. Elevate the sophistication of buyer that you are trying to attract. I don't know who I was talking to. Fran. Oh, I love that. Okay, fantastic. We'll circle back after this session, see where you landed. But many of us, and I did this in the very beginning of my business, I spent so much of my time here trying to convince somebody why they should want to make more money for themselves. That is not your qualified lead. Let them go. They have to have a desire. Just assume that you are only creating content for people who already have the desire for the solution that you provide. Not trying to convince people to have the desire. You have no control over this. The other will issue is belief. Belief might be either in you, like, are you the best person? Do my values align with who you are? Do I respect you? Have you gotten this result? Do I actually believe that you are capable of helping me get this result? The other piece is, and this is a big one, is do I believe in myself? And this is where I think a lot of people miss this in their content, is because they're hitting the principles. They got the process. You are overqualified, over-credentialed. You are the right one for the job. But you are not addressing the internal dialogue they are having with themselves, or why they do not believe that they are capable of getting the thing. And when I think about content and reducing that perceived risk, a lot of y'all are doing this on the sales call, and you are trying to pack all of this onto a sales call in an hour. And you're doing it for sure on your coaching sessions, but most of you guys are addressing a lot of this stuff privately. You are not putting it in your public content. Yeah. So it's not that you don't know. It's just when you start going public, you start whitewashing the shit out of your content. You start generalizing it, making it super generic. You start getting way too surface level. And it's because y'all are not influencers. Y'all are creating content as a way to facilitate these transference of trust touch points and to help reduce the perceived risk that a buyer feels as it relates to what it is that you sell. So it's these are the things that will reduce the perceived risk. And when you think about this and you just reflect on your own content, where do you already know you have a gap in what's publicly available for your consumers? Is it more in the principle? Is it more in the process? Is it belief in you, or is it more than belief in themselves? Where do you guys feel like the gap is for you? Can we come, and it's how do I know what is blocking their belief? Sometimes you can start with what they're saying on a sales call. What are those things they're publicly disclosing to you on that call? Go create public content about it. Go ahead.
We call these client quotes.
There you go.
What are your client quotes? And not what you think they said or your interpretation, but what did they directly say?
Yes. And I think about these client, like, I don't know the framework of the client quotes,
Yeah.
but these client quotes is like, what quotes should you be paying attention to bring in public content? And that's a really beautiful one. So I think this is something that, I've been using this for years. I go more in depth on this in the new Market Like a CEO course. But I think that when you can understand this and just correlate that, my messaging's job is to create transference of trust and reduce perceived risk. And it's important for you to know, based off of who my qualified lead is, what do they perceive as risk? And in each of these areas, and how am I addressing that publicly in my content? So there's a bingeable effect. They can consume all of that before they even get on a sales call. By the time they get there, you're not putting all this pressure on your sales call or on your one launch to do the entire job of the sales cycle. That makes sense? Okay, well, thank you for letting me use the whiteboard.
Oh my God. Okay, let me ask some of the questions I know that they would have.
Yeah.
How much of which one should they be doing?
I think it depends on the caliber of how qualified the leads are you are currently attracting and the objections that you are getting from those qualified leads on sales calls that's preventing them from buying. And I think that's where it always starts. Like, I think it's not like you could, if you're not getting sales calls right now, I would probably play in a mix of all of this. You got 100 pieces of content you got to do in 90 days, do 25 in each category. And just know that you're hitting it there. But if you're already getting sales calls, it's like, okay, what is how qualified are these leads once I get them on the call? What is my percentage rate of qualified leads? If you are like less than 60% of your leads are qualified on the call, you have a messaging problem because you are attracting people who are unqualified. Your content, people are like, oh, they're all unqualified. Your content is doing that. Your current content is creating an audience of unqualified people. That is your problem. You created that. So yeah, I would say I would pay attention to how qualified my leads are and pay attention to what are those questions that they are asking. Every question is a potential objection. It's not maybe like a hardcore objection, but I would pay attention to what are those questions or hesitations they have and which bucket they fall into. And that following week or the next 2 weeks, that'd be the primary content I'd focus on creating.